two things that you must do that must come from you as the team leader. It cannot be delegated. Number one, you have to have a vision and be able to articulate that vision. That's something that cannot be delegated. It has to come from you. And then the second thing is you have to be able to manage your culture.
Create your life.
Crée ta propre vie.
Create your life.
创造你的生活。
Create your life.
Crea la tua vita.
Create your life.
Ontdek jouw leven.
You better create your life.
Create your life.
Create la vie.
Create your life.
Create your life.
Beautiful people, this is the Create Your Life series. I'm your host, Kevin Y. Brown, and it's an amazing day. One of those chilly but not exactly cold Sundays. Very happy to be here, humbled to be here in the studio. And today we have an amazing guest. I've actually had the opportunity to work with this gentleman and see him from the CEO seat. We do our monthly CEO talks, but when I tell you that this man has a reputation amongst his staff members and in his industry as someone who's a trailblazer, who's good at creating culture and making amazing things happen. Trust me, I am not lying. I've seen it firsthand. So this brother is the CEO of CHCR Community Health Center in Richmond, which is out on Staten Island. He runs and oversees a number of facilities and over 100 employees and is basically, man, trailblazing and making things happen. So, Mr. Henry Thompson, please say hello to the Create Your Life series family.
Hello, family, and thank you for having me.
Man, no, thank you for taking the time out. I know you are busy. You know, you recently, you got a son, married, in grad school, getting your doctorate. I mean, dude, what is it that you don't do?
Well, thank you for all that. It really is humbling even to be in a position to take advantage of all of the opportunities.
Yeah.
Family is most important. As you mentioned, I have a 15-month-old.
Yes.
And so nothing can really prepare you for that experience of fatherhood, of parenting. And so having him come into our lives and being blessed with being a father, it puts a lot of things in perspective. And so I wouldn't change anything for the world. But it's a good experience.
Okay. That being said, man, can you walk us through how you kind of got here? Because you're originally from Miami, Florida. You grew up in a single parent household.
Correct.
With your mother.
Correct.
So tell us about that experience growing up in Florida, how you even made it all the way here to New York City.
Okay. So, yes, I did grow up. I was actually born in Freeport, Bahamas.
Okay.
So, immigrated here when I was about 1.5 years old.
Okay.
Grew up in Miami, Florida. Went to school in Miami. Grew up in a single-family home. My mother was everything. I always had a lot of male involvement in my life.
Okay.
My mother was from a family of 5 brothers.
Wow.
And 2 sisters.
Okay.
And so always had uncles, a lot of cousins, a lot of people in my life. Went to Archbishop Curley High School. And then it was Catholic school. It was originally an all-boys school. It was started by the Edmund Rice Christian Brothers. And in 1974, I believe it merged with the all-girls school, Notre Dame, that was located about a mile away. So it became Archbishop Curley Notre Dame High School. And why that's important, and I think it contributed to my overall development, is my high school closed last year. And this high school in Miami, Florida, it was one of the first high schools to integrate, even prior to the decision of Brown versus Board of Education.
Oh, wow.
So my high school was very diverse. And so my experience was always very diverse as far as different nationalities, different people who attended the school. And so I was fortunate. I played sports throughout my high school career, and I was fortunate to get a football scholarship to go to University of Connecticut.
Right.
And so I attended University of Connecticut, graduated from there, and then transitioned back to Miami, Florida.
Right.
Started my career, then went to grad school at University of Miami, pursued 2 master's degrees, and then eventually transitioned to New York City for a job opportunity back in 2008. And I've been in the Tri-City area ever since.
Ever since. So, you and I, we had the opportunity to talk at length. And there's one particular story that you told me that I felt was really, I guess, just powerful in terms of the strength of your mother. And, when she set her mind to do something or something was going to happen, then it had to happen.
Sure.
And that was when you talked about your hand.
Sure.
The doctors had told you that they were going to have to chop your hand off.
Yeah, so even, growing up, I was a hothead. I grew up as an only child, and, you hear about people being bullied and all of these type of things. And, when you're growing up as an only child, some people prey on that. So I got to a point where I learned to defend myself, and I wasn't somebody who was looking for fights, but I would defend myself at all costs. And my sophomore year in high school, I got into a fight in homeroom. And I got into a fight in homeroom that morning. After the fight was over, I had a cut on my hand. And at the time, my football coach, he came and got me, and he saw the cut. He sprayed some antiseptic on it, and went and met with I think it was the assistant dean at the time, to find out what happened and everything like that, and apologized. We both apologized, and we went about our day. So towards the end of the day, because at that time I was playing JV basketball, and we had a game that night.
Right.
So towards the end of the day, around 2 o'clock, my hand was very swollen. And it was very swollen, and I went to my coach so they could take a look at it, and they started to press it to see if I had any broken bones, because they thought my hand was broken because it was so swollen. And so at that point, when he was pressing it, I almost passed out. I had to lean against the wall, brace against the wall, to, just make sure I didn't pass out. So from there, my mom was contacted, and they told my mom basically I had to go to the emergency room.
Right.
So went to the emergency room at Jackson Memorial Hospital on a Friday night. And I can't tell you, in that point in the 80s, going to Jackson Memorial Hospital, which is the public safety net hospital for Miami, Florida, it was very busy. So when I got there, they saw my hand was swollen, and immediately I went for x-rays. They put a temporary cast on that because they thought it was broken. And so the x-rays came back negative. So imagine, I went to the emergency room 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. By the time the emergency room physician saw me, it was maybe 3, 4 in the morning, because at that time, based on the severity level of all of the cases, those things are priorities. So there was gunshot wounds, victims, there were car accidents. It was the emergency room was crazy. And so me sitting there, all they do is put the curtain, but you could hear people screaming. There's no anesthesia when that trauma and all that shock is there. So, that in itself was an experience. So by the time the physician saw me 3, 4 in the morning, the x-rays had came back negative, and then I was immediately admitted. 8 o'clock that morning, I was admitted to the hospital.
Okay.
And so I was admitted, and they said I had a hand infection. It was very bad, and I needed to have surgery. So the type of surgery I had, they could not stitch the wound after they did the surgery, that everything just had to discharge. And part of what they were saying is that if I had waited, the infection would have went up my arm.
Oh, wow.
And so I would have been at risk of maybe losing my hand.
Right.
And so so at that point, I remember the night, it was the day before my birthday. I remember watching the show Amen. It's probably before your time. But it was, but this was a show with Sherman Hensley, who played the Jeffersons. He had a show Amen. I can remember watching the credits. It was coming on, and that's when the orderly came and got me and took me to surgery. And then I ended up spending 6 days in the hospital, in Jackson Memorial Hospital, and that was my sophomore year.
Okay.
So the next 2 years after that, I was going to occupational therapy just to be able to make a fist on my hand again, because I could not make a fist. So I couldn't even lift weights because I could not squeeze the bar. Right. Because I still had the wound there. And so only thing I could do, I lost a lot of weight while I was there, but the only thing I could do was really do push-ups and do other type of calisthenics, but I couldn't really even do weights. So to even be able to play good enough.
That's what I was going to ask you.
To get a scholarship.
At D1 scholarship.
Yeah, 1AA. And so to me, it was a blessing in itself.
Yeah.
And because even the date that I signed my letter of intent, I have the picture with my mom was there when I was signing. You can even see when I'm holding the pen, it's kind of hard to hold the pen. Right. And because I'm right-handed and it was my dominant hand, I couldn't really write with my left when I was going to classes. Right. You know, we didn't have the technology to record the teacher and everything like that. People wasn't taking notes for me. So I just developed a technique to just be able to memorize and absorb information.
So you have to adapt.
At least the key points, and you know, that was something that really affected me.
So how did your mom really impact you? What did your mom do while you were growing up? Because I'm trying to understand how this all transitioned into you basically continuing to excel. Like, what was that impact?
She from her standpoint, she always wanted me to be independent. And she was never, she didn't treat me like her friend. And she made that very clear. You know, I'm the boss. Right. You know, and she always taught me to be independent, very respectful. Even to this day, I don't think I've ever heard my mother, she never cursed at me, like used profanity with me. As much as she's been upset or doing things, you know, as a boy, you know, you get into different things. Right. But she's never gotten to that point where she's even using profanity. And so there's always been that respect level. And I just remember when I was going up to UConn, you know, and when you go into any football program, everybody was the man.
In high school.
On their team. Everybody was the captain. Everybody was the homecoming king. Everybody is this and that. You know, everybody has that type of bravado. And so my mom wanted to come with me. And so I didn't want my mom to come with me. I didn't want people saying, oh, here comes his mom coming on campus with him and everything like that. But, you know, I was the only child. It was the first time going away from home. My mom said, look, I'm coming. I don't care what you say. And as a part of that transition, I remember my mother gave me a couple $100, and then she just said, little brother, you on your way, you on your own from this way out. And just to tell me, look, you know, I brought you this far. Right. You know, the decisions that you make now, what you do with your life, it's on you. Always will be there to support you, but my mother's position was that if anything ever happened to her, she wanted to be able to leave this world knowing that she did the best she could with me. And so some of those life lessons, even though I didn't understand it fully when I was growing up, you know, a lot of those things, those life lessons was a part of how I tackle life now. And so even from an early age, she planted that seed of education. Right. I would never miss school. I was always getting perfect attendance. All the time. Right. And so until this happened to me in high school, you know, I missed those days because I was in the hospital, but after that, I didn't really miss school.
And what did your mom do?
My mom, she worked as a environmental services worker. So, fancy title for housekeeper.
Right.
And I think that most people, when they come from different countries, especially in the Caribbean, if they don't have formal education, going into even healthcare industry, hospitality management industry, they work a lot of these domestic type of jobs.
Right.
And so she worked in a number of healthcare facilities throughout her career. And, one thing she said to me before she retired, she was like, Henry, I was always blessed with having a job. She never was unemployed.
Right.
And she was, and I never even remember even growing up, we never had public assistance. We never had any of these things. But even though my mother at the time was not, let's say, making six figures or a lot of money, she still lived within
her
means. And, my mom would hustle and she'll help people and make money on the side when she could.
Right.
And, she always, though, planned for the future.
And so your mom, she basically put in the work and did jobs, worked hard all the time so that she could provide an opportunity for you.
Sure.
And she instilled in education and also, perfect attendance, showing up for your success, for you. You did that. You graduate from school in Connecticut, and one of your first jobs was working at Coca-Cola.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that, and then also how has working at Coca-Cola shaped you to be a thriving CEO right now? Sure.
So throughout college, I had different jobs during the summer. Since we were on scholarship, we couldn't have a job during the year, during the semesters. And so always had a job in the summer, and then that would set me up for the fall semester. And so my senior year, a lot of the players were able to get jobs with Coca-Cola, the East Hartford branch. At the time, it was an independent distributor of Coca-Cola Bottling Company out of New York. And so at the time, one of the executives, they were a big supporter of the UConn football program. So different players, you could get summer jobs.
Right.
And so that summer, after I graduated, I was able to get a job there because at the time, me and several of my roommates, we were living off campus, and I didn't want to break the lease, and so I took it as an opportunity. Let me work, make some money. I knew I was transitioning back to Miami, and so it was an opportunity to work. So initially it was a summer job, and then they asked me to stay on through the fall.
Okay.
And so I was able to work through the fall, and then that December moved back to Miami. And it was interesting working at that time because it was during a transition where Coca-Cola was transitioning from the 12-ounce cans to the 20-ounce bottles. And so helping to coordinate the logistics and different accounts as a part of that transition was something that, was very interesting. There was no laptop. So doing there was no Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
So doing the log and maintaining all those records was something I was responsible for, as well as being on the truck and making the deliveries. And at that point, we delivered units to practically anywhere you can fit a soda machine or any other type of unit. I mean, we've taken the face of the door off machines. We've taken machines up the stairs in buildings with no elevators. I mean, machines that have been vandalized. I mean, third-party vendors. And so that was throughout Connecticut and Southeast Massachusetts. And so being able to work at Coca-Cola and basically a company where the product sells itself, right? Because even though you might have someone to come sell you Coca-Cola, let's say a salesman or a merchandiser, most of the time, you're still going to go with that product because it's so strong and you know exactly what you're getting. Right. And so being in that type of organization, I kind of saw how it ran itself, but also working in an environment where I was much younger than my counterparts. it was a union environment.
Mm-hmm.
You had lifers, people who had been there 30, 35 years.
Right.
At that time, I'm fresh out of college, fresh out of finishing up my senior season in football.
Yeah.
And so, to me, the job was not hard work.
Right.
It was not hard work.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that wasn't the end for me either.
What are some of the skills that you feel that you picked up during this time of doing this? Some might say, this is laborious.
Sure.
Moving and installing in those machines, but also getting the opportunity to interact with so many different people on so many different levels.
Sure.
What are some of those skill sets that you feel like you?
Well, first of all, it's very humbling
Mm-hmm.
because while I was working there,
Mm-hmm.
I also had to go back to UConn.
Mm-hmm.
And because UConn was one of the biggest accounts, and we had to install machines there.
Yeah.
Several months later, these were some of my same student colleagues. So first of all, it was a humbling experience because while people may have thought, hey, once you graduate, you have a corporate job waiting for you,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't always work that way because you may have a couple of other take other different types of positions before you hit your stride
Right.
and what you really want to do, or once you develop what your niche is.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to relate and work in that type of environment,
Mm-hmm.
it taught me, even at that early age, how to relate to people on different levels. Because even working in the warehouse, there were different generations. You had people who were old enough to be my grandparents, or people who had grandkids or kids my age.
Right.
And I was working hand in hand with them, making just as much as they were making. I didn't have enough time.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't put in that amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so even at that point,
Mm-hmm.
The respect came based on your work ethic.
Right.
Who may get you
So far.
to that opportunity.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the colleagues, the people who were working side by side with you, that respect comes from the work ethic.
Mm.
And, we see that today, even in my own organizations. We dealing with multiple generations.
Right.
People who are now coming into the workforce, people who are existing, you're mixing old with new. So there's a lot of those dynamics that are still at play. And I heard the New York City chancellor give a speech, and what they started to really talk about or hone in on is even the curriculums that are being taught in the schools today. Is more team-based concepts,
Absolutely.
team-based projects, so that people understand when you go into a real organization or the real world, you got to work with other people.
Absolutely.
And some of those people might not look like you, might not sound like you, might not share the same philosophies with you, but at the end of the day, you have a product.
Right.
And all of you have to embrace that product and then be on the same page to deliver.
You being the CEO of CACR, can you give us 3 ways that you instill that type of environment for your employees to make sure that everybody is open
Sure.
to working in a team, and no matter what the differences are amongst them?
Sure. Well, I think two of the things, at least from my perspective, that has to come from me, and I think this
Top down.
I think this is consistent if you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a head coach, if you're leading a team of people,
Right.
whatever industry. I think 2 things, and I don't own this. It came from a meeting, and one of the consultants who were challenging all of us as CEOs and team leaders. 2 things that you must do, that must come from you as the team leader. It cannot be delegated. Number 1, you have to have a vision and be able to articulate that vision. That's something that cannot be delegated. It has to come from you. And then the second thing is you have to be able to manage your culture. cannot be delegated. It cannot be it cannot be passed on. Everything else in the organization pretty much can be delegated. But those two things, having a vision and managing your culture, are not things that can be delegated. So from the onset, being able to express a vision, being able to have something that everybody can rally around. My position is that, look, our vision is that we want to provide the best service that we can provide. I want to be able to be comfortable enough to bring my own family for certain services. And if I'm not comfortable that the organization is providing the best care and the best service possible, that I'm comfortable with bringing my own family there, then you know what? I don't need to lead the team. And then second, as far as culture, I've always had an open door policy. And, it sounds cliche as an open door policy because even though you have an open door policy, most of the time people don't want to exercise it.
Right.
But what I've tried to do is that every person that was hired in the organization after November 2nd, 2009, I've had a meeting with them. I've had a one-to-one with them before they joined the organization, just to communicate philosophies, just to share experiences, just to also let them know that, I'm accessible. And, some of the takeaway that I've gotten back over the years is that some people have worked in corporations where they have never met the CEO.
Right.
That they have never, it was a great show that used to come on called Undercover CEO.
Yeah.
Where they used to go and do menial jobs and people didn't even know that they were meeting with them. And so to me, this speaks to the culture.
Right.
That it's not necessarily top down, but it's across and flat.
Okay. And real quick, we got 2 minutes before we have to cut to a musical break. What inspired you to switch from big business like Coca-Cola, working at these other companies? You have your MBA, but now you are in the healthcare space. What inspired that transition?
Well, first, I worked at Coca-Cola, then I spent a brief time working at Royal Caribbean in the human resources, corporate human resources. And then I started work for a state labor department.
Right.
And then from there, I realized that, I wanted to work within the community and wanted to work to feel like I was giving back to the community that gave me so much in turn. And also, my mom had spent many years working at a number of hospitals within the community. And so I realized that even throughout those years, she always had a passion for serving people. And indirectly, I started to embrace a lot of those different virtues.
Okay.
And so for me, working in healthcare didn't really feel like it was a job per se, but really felt like it was a calling and what I was meant to do.
Okay. Well, awesome. Well, beautiful people, we are here with Mr. Henry Thompson. Call in 212-650-6903 if you have any questions for us. Also, shout out to everybody who is with us on Facebook Live, our Create Your Life family. Chris is in the studio. Noah's in the studio. Hey, what's up, everyone? Give us a call. Call in. Ask some questions. Beautiful people, this is the Create Your Life series. I'm your host, Kevin Y. Brown. We are back. So happy to have Henry Thompson in the studio with us. Henry, you here?
I'm here.
All right, cool. Well, before we left, we had the opportunity to hear about you, your inspiration, why you even went and got into healthcare. One thing that I want to acknowledge is the fact that you have been CEO of Community Health Center Richmond for 8 years.
Yes.
Most CEOs average about, 2.5 to 3 years. What are some of the reasons why you feel like you've been able to sustain as CEO, and what are some of the misconceptions about the CEO role that most people get wrong?
That's an excellent question. And let me first say, when I was first appointed CEO as the organization, I had no intentions or thought that, or time frame for how long I would serve in the position. And so it's been an interesting journey, a very good journey. When I first joined, it was a financial turnaround. and really helping to take the organization to the next level.
Yeah.
It was during the first economic stimulus package when President Obama was in office. And so there was a lot of uncertainty. The economy had just tanked. There was a lot of different things going on.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting time to still be in healthcare.
Right.
And my particular center, it had initially was born out of a previous hospital system which had filed for bankruptcy and was looking to close that site. So independent organization was created after that, and some of those original employees became some of the first employees of the center.
Right.
And so it had already been 3 years in the business when I was appointed. So it was an opportunity for some fresh leadership, fresh perspective, and really to help chart the journey that would bring us into the future.
That being said, how did you get those employees who had been there before you on board with your vision?
Well, first thing I did was I just needed to see and listen. So first thing I had to do was just listen. There was all of the things that are documented of all of the issues and concerns. But the other thing I needed to do was just listen. And so being able to listen, there was an icebreaker that I do.
Okay.
Where when I first met with all employees, I asked everyone to introduce themselves, name, title, where they work, how long they've been working with the center, and then something about them that's not on their resume.
Yeah.
And usually I tell people to stay away from like children and religious affiliation, that type of stuff. Simply because I know everybody's proud of those type of things.
Right. You want to get to know this person.
What I look for as a part of the exercise is looking at the intangibles, you know? And so through that really helped to disarm people. Because if I have someone who's a gardener, for example, and who likes to work on their yard, to me, to do that type of work, you have to be very patient.
Right.
You have to be very calm. You have to be very patient. So these are qualities when they transition to the workplace, when things start to happen, you want somebody who's going to be able to be calm.
Right.
And so forth. So being able to do that is just a way for me to starting to get to know the staff. And then I also participate in that as well. So even bringing up the stuff that's not on my resume, having played football at the Division I level or working for Coca-Cola or some of these other things, these are some of the things that people don't know about me.
Right.
And so I think being transparent that way really helped to kind of set the tone. And then from there, being able to, incorporate some of their ideas and move forward. There's all these different dimensions of leadership,
Right.
You could talk about authoritative leadership, transformational leadership, all these different situational leadership, all these servant leadership, everything, right?
Right.
When you're in a turnaround situation, sometimes you need to make decisions.
Right.
It's not the time to build consensus.
Right.
And then when you're thinking about the future, you also need to be able to build consensus and do all those different things. So the environment will also dictate the type of style. And so coming into an organization, you have to be able to understand that.
Of those leadership styles that you just named, which would you say are your, let's say, top two go-tos? Because it seems like you know a lot of them. And, yeah.
I mean, for me, I can flip back between all of them.
Right.
For the simple reason is that, depending on who your audience is,
right.
you'll be able to we'll be able to dictate which one you use. So if you're going to donors and helping to raise revenue, that's a different type of leadership style that you use.
Right.
You know, so I would say, you know, servant leadership is almost the reason for working in an organization where you're serving people.
Right.
And really, the approach that I have used with my staff is that, look, you don't report to me, I report to you. So, you know, what are the tools and the resources that you need that can make you more effective in your role?
Okay.
And really switching it. And so it's my job to go and secure those resources. Do you need more training? Do you need technology? Do you need all of these other things that will help you to fulfill your role?
Okay. I want to switch modes a little bit and kind of get a little personal. You're the CEO. You're getting your doctorate. You're in a doctoral program right now. You're a husband. You have a 15-month-old son, Yuri, who is actually running around with 5-pound weights right now. You showed me the picture. Such a strong guy. What are some of your techniques and keys to balancing it all?
Sure. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you know, I keep it all into perspective. You know, even reaching the highest heights in academic excellence doesn't mean that you know it all. You know, because every day I'm still learning things new. You know, during the break, you was talking about Spiderfly and some of these other technology platforms. I'm not even on those things.
Right.
My wife she's a techie. She does technology integration in the classroom.
Right.
Where she goes and trains teachers and models. And so she knows all of those different things. So she called me a dinosaur. So, but I believe that for the space I'm in, I'm able to utilize and utilize those things. So for me, when it comes to family life, even my wife, she's been with me along the journey.
Right.
So she was with me before I got into the role, even though we were dating at the time. She was with me when I was unemployed and collecting unemployment.
Right.
Then being able to get appointed, then have a contract renewal and everything like that. So being able to have a partner who understands the journey and not somebody who's competing with me,
Right.
you know, it definitely makes things, it definitely provides that balance that we all need.
Okay. Wow, I like that, and definitely I like that answer. I've personally seen your employees chant, you know, that they want to keep you as the CEO of the company in a strategic planning meeting that I was running. How does that make you feel, and can you give us a couple of misconceptions about the CEO suite that people may have?
Well, I think one of the things that may be a misconception, at least from my point of view, based on my own experience, is that we're not approachable. You know, it's a awesome weight when, hey, some of the things start and stop with you, and some of the decisions you make could affect people's lives.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a role that should be taken seriously. And so when you have that much weight, sometimes people may have the misconceptions that, well, my issue is not something that he or she should be bothered with. And so I think that's one of the big misconceptions. I joke around. I like a good joke from here to there.
Yeah.
I'm a human. I laugh at myself. I can, I can take a joke.
Yeah.
And I even one of the staff members, one of my other staff members says she is one of my staff members. She can do a good impression of me.
Oh, wow.
But she's never done it in front of me.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like that movie Joe Clark, where he walked in on one of the students doing an impression of him. and he gave the face like he was mad, but he really wasn't.
Yeah.
And so, that's the type of environment that, helps to keep things, in a friendly atmosphere.
Okay. All right. Now I want to switch modes with you, and we want to jump into the dolphin tank. Now, the dolphin tank, it's pretty safe. It's it's no sharks in there, just dolphins. We all swimming together, and so these are questions that everybody has to answer when they come on the show. Are you ready to jump in?
Sure.
Okay. Number one, what's the top technology that you're using to make your business run smoothly?
We have an electronic health records system, and that system, we're on the latest version.
Okay.
And so it ties into our accounting system and our financial software. And it's crucial because patient revenues accounts for 80% of our business.
Right.
And so that's the top tech.
What's it called?
eClinical Works.
eClinical Works. Okay. Awesome. What's your favorite quote or motto?
Go hard or go home.
I like that. Why?
I mean, this was something that we always used to use in football before we went into the weight room or before we went to practice. And it goes back to even one of my one of the things that even a coach used to say to me in high school when we go into practice. And I have several of them. One used to say, every day get better. Every day you're going to get better or worse, but you're not going to be the same. And then I had another coach, and this was in basketball, he used to say, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Okay.
But go hard or go home, I think that's the philosophy. Being able to have the mindset that I'm going to give everything I got when I walk in the door. And I'm just going to leave it all in the organization.
Absolutely.
And getting in that mindset, to me, is something that I try to use every day.
Okay. Favorite book?
My favorite book, outside of the Bible, right?
Okay.
I really like the Count of Monte Cristo.
Okay.
To me, this is the ultimate description of survival, humility, forgiveness, all of the different emotions that we go through as humans.
Okay. One of the most important questions of the show. 3 jewels that you would tell someone looking to create their best life.
I think the first jewel is that you have to be comfortable with the person in the mirror. Because if you're not comfortable with the person in the mirror, if you're trying to be somebody else, if you're trying to live up to other people's idea of what success is or anything like that, to me, you've already failed.
Okay.
Number 2, I think that you need to be able to have people who will be in front of you, behind you, to the right of you, to the left of you. There are those people that will do it with you. They'll do it for you. They'll do it on your behalf. And so you have to be able to understand the people you have with you. And, everybody's not going to be along for the ride.
Right. Some people going to drop off.
So I think, you have to be able to do that. I mean, I have staff members. I ask them quite frankly, hey, do you think you can sit in the seat? If you had to fire your best friend tomorrow, would you be able to do it?
Okay.
And, if you cannot do that, if you're not prepared to do that, then I would say save yourself the heartache.
Okay.
And number 3, I think you have to have passion for whatever you do. Money, accolades, all of those different things. You can be the hero today and the GOAT tomorrow. But if you don't have a passion for what you do and what you bring to the table, it won't be long lasting.
Okay. Real quick, what's next for you coming up with CHCR and yourself personally?
Well, for CHCR, we have several projects that we're working on right now. We have 2 new locations that we are developing as new construction from the ground up. One facility is a replacement site for our flagship health center. And the second project is a ground-up construction for a new facility in a different section of Staten Island.
Okay.
And so both projects are valued over $20 million.
Wow.
It's going to also double our current staff and really help us to be financially sustainable for the future.
Okay. And how can we keep in contact with you? If, let's say, someone listening is looking for employment or wants to know more about your style, is there any way?
Yeah, I mean, if for people who are interested in employment opportunities, you can go to our website, look at the career opportunities section at www.chcrichmond.org, or you can send a copy of your cover letter as well as resume to careers@chcrichmond.org. If you want to send me an email directly, you can send it to Thompson, THOMPSON, at chcrichmond.org. And if I'm in a position to answer any questions that we didn't address on the show, I can address it through the email as well.
Okay. Well, man, Henry, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate you.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and wonderful job that you're doing. And I think the series is very impactful and thoughtful.
Thank you.
And so I wish you continued success.
Okay. Thank you. Beautiful people, this is the Create Your Life series. I'm your host, Kevin Y. Brown. And we are here with our guest, Mr. Henry Thompson, and it's time for the turnaround. If you don't know what the turnaround is, it is when our guest gets to ask me up to 3 questions that they want, and I have to answer them no matter what. And you can blame my staff for this, but Henry, what you got for me?
So first thing I want to know, Kevin, is what's your vision for the Create Your Life series?
Wow, what's my vision? My vision for the Create Your Life series is to see it grow and really impact and help people create their best lives. That's like my thing. I really enjoy seeing people at their best. I wanted to grow into a traveling series where we actually get to go out into the world and interview people who are creating their lives across the world. That would be fun, and also for us to branch off and have some different legs. We have like a series of books and things of that nature. So very excited about the possibilities, and I also want us to get on to expand and be syndicated on other networks, and also for it to become something like a TV show where people can literally tune in. I know we have, our dedicated listeners who come in on Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and stuff like that, but I really want it to be a movement and, a culture piece, timeless.
Good. So I know that you have different staff members, people who work remotely and do things at a distance.
Yes.
How are you managing your culture?
Wow. So I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. Being able to witness you in your role has helped me tremendously. From the times that we've worked together, and I sometimes call you and ask you different questions. So one of the biggest things is that anybody on my team can always ask me, or I have an open door policy. You can ask me anything. You can challenge some of the things that that we create. If you have some different ideas, then I'm always welcome to them and willing to adapt. In some situations, like you said earlier, a decision has to be made right there, or, especially if it's financial and things like that. So I will have to, my decision might take precedent. But just being open, being honest, and being willing to admit when I make a mistake is huge, and just leaving that communication open. And so there's a check-in, and we have basically ways of operating and deadlines and checklists for things that have to be done every single week. And so my biggest thing is to make sure that we have a routine in place so that everything is kind of working like clockwork on any given day, so that if someone needs to take time off, or, for example, Noah and his girlfriend just had to leave, well, everything is in place for him to win because he did what he needed to do as far as filming the last part of the show. And so it's okay for him to walk out because the work has been done. And I can do the rest of the breakdown. This is not something that happens repeatedly, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Okay. And I guess the last question I would ask is that, well, first, how I came to know of the type of work that you do is looking at the video when you was in Australia.
Yeah.
When you did the conference, and it was the nonverbal cues that your audience that you had participating. And I was like, man, this would be a different approach when we do our annual in-service and strategic planning, to have someone come with this type of technique.
Yes.
You know, so that's, when I saw that, I immediately saw, okay, boom, this is something, it would be different. I think it would disarm people because they wouldn't know what to expect.
Right.
And so forth. So how would you take that? Because I know you did it several years ago, so I don't know if you've revisited how you do that exercise or that workshop or that series. How would you use that type of technique to, hey, what if the New York Giants called you? Or what if another team of people called and said, Kevin, you know, we want you to come and do this for our staff?
Well, it's an opportunity. Number one, all of my presentations are very interactive, and that is original. I literally made that up. And what it is, the technique that he's talking about, Create Your Life Series, fam, I do an exercise where I show people that leadership is not about the words that you use, but about the actions that you take. And you can I literally got a room of 925 people from 25 different countries that did not speak English to move and do this exercise, because it's all about the action that you take. If I was to get a call from an organization like a MLB team or an NBA team, the exercise is actually evergreen, but it's the content that you put behind it and the context that you put behind it that makes the difference when landing the point. Every action that you take when you're doing a speech, it has to have a purpose. And so that's why it's very, very important to know and do your research and understand who it is that you're presenting to, because if the information isn't relevant that you're delivering, then you're playing games, you know. And one of my biggest policies whenever taking on any project is that, number one, be informed, but also make the person who hired you look good. And the only way to do that is, number one, to be good at what you do, but to also be very thorough in your research and ask as many questions as possible, you know, and even that even goes back to the culture and the style. Like you said earlier, what you do with your staff is you ask questions when you don't know. I ask questions when I don't know stuff, you know. So it's just one of those things that you just really want to stay consistent with and just really hone in, and you just keep getting better with time and as you keep growing.
All right, good.
Okay.
I think that complete my 3.
Okay. Well, Create Your Life Series family, it's been an amazing time. Appreciate you all for being here. Hold on, we got somebody on Facebook Live. Let's see who is talking to us. Alicia Nash says that we have done a great job on the interview. So, Henry, you did a great job on the interview. I'm here every Sunday, you know, so they're not really worried about me. It's you, man.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so beautiful people, be blessed. Enjoy the rest of your week. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Create Your Life series, where we help you maximize your potential and results in the area of personal development, entrepreneurship, and travel. And I'm your host, Kevin Y. Brown.
Create your life.
Crée ta propre vie.
Create your life.
创造你的生活。
Create your life.
Crea la tua vita.
Create your life.
Und skip your liver.
You better create your life.
Create your life.
Create la vie.
Create your life.
Create your life.